This is exactly not the right day for this to happen, but Time Magazine has an exclusive story with Andriy Yermak. Now, he is a Ukrainian official. And again, this is an exclusive story at time.com right now. Of course, we know that they released the impeachment stuff today. Since the start of the public impeachment hearings in Congress last month, Andriy Yermak, a top advisor to the president of Ukraine, that is Zelensky, has heard his name come up again and again in witness testimony. He took part in many of the events at the center of the impeachment inquiry, and the 300-page report released last week by the inquiry mentions Yermak dozens of times. But in his first interview about those public hearings, Yermak has questioned the recollections of crucial witnesses in the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump's alleged abuse of his office for political gain. Quote, "Listen, I want to tell you straight," Yermak told Time in the interview on December 4th. Okay, this is December 4th. It's kind of interesting that this is coming out now. The first time that he has openly discussed his views of the public impeachment hearings. Of course, now, when I watch these shows on television, my name often comes up, and I see people there whom I recognize, whom I met and know, he says. He's referring to witness testimony. That is their personal opinion, especially the positions they expressed while under oath. I have my own truth, and I know what I know. The most crucial point at which Yermak's recollection contradicts the testimony of the inquiry's witnesses relates to a meeting in Warsaw on September 1st when the Ukrainian President Zelensky met with U.S. Vice President Pence. The meeting was part of an ongoing effort by the Zelensky administration to improve ties with the Trump administration. One of the American diplomats who attended that meeting, Gordan, Sondland, and U.S. ambassador to the European Union, testified before the inquiry last month that he pulled Yermak aside after the Warsaw meeting and delivered an important message. U.S. aid to Ukraine would probably not resume until Zelensky's government announced 2 investigations that could implicate President Trump's political rivals. I told Mr. Yermak that I believe that the resumption of the U.S. aid would likely not occur until Ukraine took some kind of action on the public statement that he had discussed for many weeks. That's what Sondland testified. Of course, Sondland also ended up being forced to kind of retract that and explain that a little bit later on in testimony, that he had no firsthand knowledge of any of that. He was just assuming and guessing on his own. This statement was allegedly intended to announce 2 investigations, one into the discredited claims that Ukraine helped Hillary Clinton's campaign in the 2016 presidential election. That is not discredited, by the way. The Ukrainians have actually convicted 2 people in courts for doing that. And another related to the work that Hunter Biden, the son of presidential candidate Joe Biden, did for Ukrainian gas company Burisma Holdings while his father was the U.S. vice president. Now, based on the testimony from Sondland and other witnesses, the final report from the House Intelligence Committee concluded last week that Sondland made this offer of a quid pro quo clear to Yermak that day in Warsaw. Following this meeting, Ambassador Sondland pulled aside President Zelensky's advisor, Mr. Yermak, to explain that the hold on security assistance was conditioned on the public announcement of the Burisma Biden and the 2016 interference investigations, the report states. And again, Sondland basically had to retract all of that under cross-examination later on in the day when he was giving his testimony, and had to admit that he basically made that all up on his own, and he had no indication that any of that was true. Okay? So Yermak also disputes what Sondland testified to. He says, Gordan and I were never alone together. He said, we bumped into each other in the hallway next to the escalator as I was walking out. He recalls that several members of the American and Ukrainian delegations were also nearby, as well as bodyguards and hotel staff, though he was not sure whether any of them heard his brief conversation with Sondland. Quote, and I remember everything is fine with the memory. We talked about how well the meeting went. That's all we talked about. That's what Yermak says. So Yermak is saying that Sondland never said anything that Sondland testified to saying, in which Sondland was forced to admit later on under cross-examination at the hearing while he was under oath that he made all of that up anyway, and that he was coming to his own conclusions about the investigations, but that nobody had ever actually said anything. And eventually, when the president was kind of asked, what do you want from the Ukraine? The president said nothing. Okay. These comments cast doubt on an important moment at the impeachment inquiry's reconstruction of events, specifically the only known point at which the American official directly tells the Ukrainians about the link between U.S. aid and the announcement of specific investigations. And again, Sondland was doing this purely out of whole cloth, but now Now, Yermak says it never even happened. He never even had that conversation with me. In a statement, Sondland's lawyer said Ambassador Sondland stands by his prior testimony, will not comment further. Yermak said no one from the congressional committees that are overseeing the impeachment inquiry have contacted him to seek his testimony, nor have any other U.S. officials. Well, of course. There's a reason that the Democrats don't want to talk to any of the Ukrainian officials about this, because the Ukrainian officials, all of them, the president, the foreign minister, now the president's aide, have all said, no, there was no quid pro quo. There were no conditions on aid. They did not ask us to investigate Biden for political purposes. There's none of that. So the reason that the Democrats don't want to interview any of the Ukrainians about this is because the Ukrainians have already publicly said that what the Democrats are claiming happened didn't happen. And this is yet another case where you have another individual whose name keeps coming up at the hearings as evidence. He's saying what they're saying about me isn't true, and yet they haven't come to me and asked me if any of this even happened. Isn't that interesting? This is in Time magazine today. So pretty interesting. This was posted at 10:33 a.m. today. The interview happened on December 4th. Here we are on the 10th. The impeachment stuff comes out today, and Time magazine releases this. Interesting timing, don't you think? Got more coming up. Newstalk 95.3, Michiana's news channel.